As many of you already know, but there's a couple of you who don't, my name is Anza Yarshka. I'm the gallery director at Sierra Nevada University. I'm also the program assistant for the MFA in Interdisciplinary Arts program. So I'm here wearing both hats as I help us kind of enter into this artist lecture conversation that we're going to have this evening as part of our larger series. So tonight we are graced with the presence of Ayanna Moore and Julia Schwadren, who are going to be having a kind of casual conversation between them, linking their work as well as talking about how they themselves are in relation to each other. I'm going to read their bios so we kind of get to know who we're going to be hearing from. So bear with me as I pull this up. Okay, so Ayanna Moore lives and works in Chicago. She is a conceptual artist whose work explores Blackness, gender, desire, and language. She works across various medias to create paintings, prints, drawings, and performance. She earned a BFA in Painting and Printmaking from Virginia Commonwealth University and an MFA in Printmaking from Tyler School of Art. Moore has participated in numerous exhibitions, including Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago, DePaul Art Museum, and Museum of Contemporary Photography Chicago, the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh, and the Studio Museum in Harlem, New York, among others. Her work is featured in Astria, Suparak, and Brett Kashmere's Incite Journal of Experimental Media, Sports Issue 2017, Nicole Fleetwood's Troubling Vision, Performance, Visuality, and Blackness 2011, and What is Contemporary Art 2009 by Terry E. Smith. Julia Schwadren, who a couple of us have maybe seen around here and there, not sure if you know who she is. For those of you who don't, Julia Schwadren lives and works in South Lake Tahoe, California. Julia is a painter whose work is based on mapping relationships between internal and external landscapes. She received her BA in studio art from UC San Diego in 1998 and her MFA in painting from the Tyler School of Art in 2004. Julia has shown her artwork in multiple venues across the country as well as internationally. Julia was a visiting professor of painting and artist in residence at Chiang Mai University from 2010 to 2011, and a visiting assistant professor of painting at the University of Iowa from 2007 to 2009. She is currently on the Faculty of Fine Arts Department, as well as the assistant director of the MFA in Interdisciplinary Arts at Sierra Nevada University. She will show her work locally in an upcoming 3-person exhibition at the Oak Park Arts Center in Fallon, Nevada next spring, 2021. So now that we know who these folks are, I'm going to hand it over to them. So I ask all of our participant attendees to turn off your videos for the time being. We're gonna listen to the conversation. And then at the end, there will be time for a Q&A when you can pop your screen back on and we can be in community again and see each other. So stick around for that. Also feel free to use the chat box for kind of an ongoing discussion. I'll be kind of noting where there's questions that we can come back to later at the end. So feel free to take advantage of that. Without any more rigmarole, I'm going to hand it over to you, Julia and Ayanna. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anza.
Thanks, Anza.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with everyone so that we can look at this presentation we put together for you guys. Okay. All right.
All right.
This is the start.
Yes. What's up, Schwadren?
What's up, Ayanna? Yeah, do you want to kick it off?
I guess first I just want to say welcome to everyone. Thanks so much for being here and witnessing this conversation in some ways between old friends, old artist friends, and this is a bit of an experiment for us. I don't think either of us have presented our work in quite this fashion. So that's a bit of a disclaimer, but we thought that this would be a really nice opportunity to reconnect through our work and share with you some of the emergent overlaps that we've learned about one another, I would say. I think our work has been in conversation even when we aren't in conversation.
That's true.
So
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that as a, that's kind of a unique layer in this that inspired this style of presentation. We also want to share with you the format with which we approach this, because in a way it's a bit of an exercise, a prompt that I kind of came up with, although that doesn't mean that it's an original one, is I just asked Julia to respond to some of the images that I put in this presentation with her own work, and also that we might fold in some images that aren't our work in reaction. Although I think we kind of stuck with our studio.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right, Julia?
It sounds right. We have, yeah, so I think it's actually the 2 layers, or at least 2 layers of sort of walking you through a tactile description of some of the actual work itself, and in juxtaposition to one another's works. And then we do have also singular images in here, but then in addition to that, it's or on top of that, it's also the framework of putting together selections from throughout the multiple years and several bodies of work that they're having a conversation, we're having a conversation. Oh, hi, Mom. And my mom's here. And so we can actually take you guys kind of on this journey through the presentation as a tool as well as a material. And so that was kind of an interesting twist for us. So this is not necessarily, I guess, a linear path like you'd see a normal artist talk. Like, first I made this, then I made this. This is more like Ayanna put some stuff out, I put some stuff out, we changed it, we switched it, we played with it, and then we talked about like she said, emergent themes, both formal and conceptual and relationship wise. And yeah, the framework also allowed us to talk about what we both feel is super important, which is artistic friendship relationships, and how they've gotten us through 20 years of knowing each other. We recognize that this summer, 20 years ago, is when we met. Don't judge how old we are, but sometimes, as Ayanna said, I said, we're getting old, and she said, you're getting old, I'm getting better. So that gave me an indication of where this talk was gonna go. Yeah, so 20 years ago we met. I was a resident artist, my first residency that I've ever gone on at a place called Oxbow, which is in Michigan. And Ayanna was there as one of the resident teaching artists and someone with whom I had the luck to do a studio visit. And the whole residency itself is only a week long. It's kind of bananas that people come all the way from different places just to spend a week in a tiny little cabin. It's literally like a shed, I think. And I brought, because it was my first, experience doing a residency, I brought like every single, art supply I had in my studio and dragged it all the way from Brooklyn to Michigan. And I had all these aspirations for what I would accomplish in this short period of time. And of course, none of that exactly happened. But what I did get was a conversation with Ayanna, and it was our first chance meeting. And since then, we've been buddies and artistic collaborators and conversation having people. And even when we haven't seen each other through the years, in periods of time, we've been checking in on each other's work. And so I think you'll see there's some pretty intensely significant overlaps.
Yeah. I'll say, so that we can kind of jump in and the story can kind of unfold as we're showing the work. This is a really nice place to start. As Schwadren said, we met at Oxbow. It's a artist residency and summer school in Saugatuck, Michigan. And it's kind of ironic that we're beginning with this kind of point to the land and sky, I would say, generally speaking, not on purpose. But I recently gave myself permission to paint again after abandoning painting for many, many years. Probably right around the time, right after 2000.
Welcome
No
back.
on you.
Yeah. That's my fault, I'm sure. Yeah.
But I was at Oxbow to teach, I was co-teaching a multi-level painting class. And I stopped painting after that. So over the past 2 years, I've been revisiting painting, and I've been embracing not being an expert, if you will, at the medium, kind of reintroducing myself to the skills and tools of painting. And interestingly enough, Oxbow is a place that I also revisited recently, again in a teaching capacity, with a dear friend and poet, Krista Franklin, who's also a visual artist. And we were teaching a course around poetry and printmaking, and the kind of dialogue between those two forms. And while we were there, we were making kind of joking reference to the landscape as both, or residencies within a rural setting, as both this idea of this kind of utopian setting, but also a space of conflict depending on your relationship to the landscape. And so joking about that space as a space potentially of horror, of mysticism, of the Gothic, and thinking about Black people in relation to those spaces. So we began to kind of joke about that a bit, and a course idea emerged from it. And we've been teaching this course called Black in the Woods, Representation and the Pastoral. So some of that has been, I think, reflected in the work that I've been making, less of a illustration of the landscape or kind of literal reference to the landscape, but reimagining a relationship to the landscape. So I think it's kind of nice to see, Schwadren, your response to the first painting of the slideshow. Yeah, go ahead.
We can look at a bigger image of Ayanna's painting. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just interesting, your response to this initial painting, in which there are lots of things going on, obviously. But what I noticed between our two initial kind of offerings is this tension between these really kind of expressive moments and these very kind of structured moments. In your case, the text that I think that forms kind of the support for what's occurring on top, that feels really botanical or referencing the landscape.
Yeah. So to go back, I loved hearing about, we spoke maybe last year about the Black in the Woods concept, and I loved hearing about, I love Ayanna's brain and the way she finds really smart and thoughtful ways to integrate her experiences into curriculum and into a series of questions for other people to be in conversation about, which is I feel like the best way to be a teacher, is to invite people into questioning. And then as an artist, I think what we both share is that we get to be free in some ways of directing the show, and to be, sorry, I'll stop hopping around here, but to be, to kind of receive lots of ideas and gestural inclinations, structural decisions that we can then find a balance between within the composition. I mean, I think the new paintings are new to me too, your new paintings, as are mine to you. So it is compelling in particular to see how in this painting you're using the shape and the shape of the rectangle, as well as the shape of the triangle, and then the shape of the square, and then the shape of her hair, and all of these repeated motifs to embed something and also to reveal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the kind of structure that the geometric layer provides kind of gives me something to respond to. And it is a pretty intuitive process. I'm guessing you can relate to that with your work. Mm-hmm. And the collage element gives me something to be in dialogue with. Right. In this case, I'm still thinking about the great Ebony magazine and the ways in which Black life has been captured in that publication, and it serves as an archive for me, but also to kind of reimagine that publication. And so sometimes I'm referring to ads. In this case, it's an ad for some kind of hair product, and thinking about that hair as a kind of geography that I would respond to. Yeah. And thinking about Black people and the body as a kind of gestural moment. So in the areas where there are more skin-like tones, I'm thinking about alternatives to figuration, or just other points of entry into this conversation that's really emerging more so than this is exactly what I want to say or to do.
Yep. So I'm gonna keep moving and try to draw connections in some way to the similar instincts. For me, I'm my perpetual architecture, the perpetual architecture of thought and words and language are just omnipresent in my brain. And so as a person, I'm, talking and writing a lot as part of my daily job, and just the way that I am, I'm extremely verbal. And so for me, language was a natural way when I started to write in my paintings. It was a way for me to, in a sense, like get it out, but also detach meaning in some way and play with where language became an image and where it flipped back into meaning, and try to find that sweet spot where it did both. The word everything is a word that I've repeatedly used in multiple ways, in multiple graphic layout, in different works. And this is a painting on a stretched piece of fabric that I silk screened with the word everything. And I took portions of that giant fabric that I had used for a different project and began to stretch it and make paintings on top of it as another way to interrupt the language. And when I moved to the woods, which is not my natural habitat, but I'm learning to understand in my own way, I also started to see relationships between that natural landscape and the landscape, the scrambled eggs of language in my head. And my kind of interest was in trying to capture the feelings within certain types of flora and fauna, complicate or to interrupt other kinds of what you might call a landscape of thought in your mind. And so it's different compositions are playing with that, and how color works to push and pull you out of a surface or out of a field. I think this one's quite literally called Field. There's my daughter.
There's a little person back there.
Okay.
Watching you downstairs.
Yes.
It's okay. Oh, I can't hear you.
Ooh.
Okay, go downstairs. I'll come down soon. So,
humans.
You can't catch a break. Can't even get this lecture.
It's real.
It's real. Yeah. So keeping it moving.
We can't pick and choose what everything is. You said everything.
I did, let them in.
Right?
Let the
Yeah.
babies- Yeah.
And everything is a word that that you've used in a few different pieces, I think.
Many.
So we'll probably, and it's in another piece in our slideshow, I think.
I bet it is. I don't remember, but I'll check.
Okay. So we're gonna try to keep pace because we got like 20 slides.
Yeah, we're working on it. Pushing it through.
So-
Explain what we've got here.
Yeah. So this is another funny pairing. I was really thrilled to see that you responded to Free to Be Myself All the Time with this installation, which brings in these elements of landscape, both imaged and in real space, I believe. Just tell me what that space is again.
It was this space that has since been torn down, but I was invited to be part of an installation of work in this old mill that was in Healdsburg, California. And I don't remember exactly how the invitation came to be. So I didn't know the people personally, but it was through other people I had worked with. So I showed up having seen like one or two photos. And when I got there, I was like, this is my idea of an installation. Like for me, to have these paintings inside this ivy, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better setup. I really love the idea of the paintings being outside. I mean, normally I'm dragging branches and things from outside into my studio. In this series of work, I was literally like pinning them up and using them as still lives, but I don't always do that. So I felt really good to put them back in there and then have all the diagonals and the patterns of the actual architecture kind of hold them up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved seeing this element of the dangle in your.
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoy the framing that you kind of set up and the grid and then this kind of like interruption of this diagonal. As I've been thinking about how to begin, these diagonal bars have served to get me going. And they both have this quality of inside and outside for me. So it was really nice to see you kind of pair it with something that has an architectural suggestion, but I'm still not sure what I'm looking at. And that's been something that for me has been really exciting, to embrace a certain level of uncertainty or a level of suggestion. So again, in the painting, I'm taking an ad. In this case, it might be a cigarette ad. And then I'm kind of creating this tension around this part of the face, kind of highlighting the mouth. And offering that as something for the viewer to kind of grapple with or to kind of make sense of or to draw meaning from. But I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it's an interesting way to use a horizon line of some kind, almost an upside down horizon line or something like the diagonal, this moon or sun shape. I don't know. I got it.
Yeah. I like hearing that because it really is me taking whatever I can find in my studio and tracing it. So in fact, sometimes I'm just utilizing what's around me and kind of giving it a different kind of job to do. So yeah, I certainly didn't intend for landscape to be the read from that shape, but that's what was revealed. And and there's been no time in my making in which I've allowed for that kind of play. So it's been exciting to kind of teeter back and forth between different kinds of meaning in the work that I make.
Can you talk about the little painting, buddy?
Yeah. The little painting is the companion. You know, sometimes you're by yourself and sometimes you're with a companion, right? And so it's not necessarily a diptych, because I think historically a diptych is defined as they're the same size, right? And we kind of talk about that, that there's like slippage in that definition. But yeah, the tiny painting is like the partner of the big painting. And I think it can serve as a kind of a departure or a legend that gives you some information to enter the painting. And I think that the little painting needs the big painting, but the big painting could stand on its own, if that makes sense.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
It does suggest some questions when you bring the little painting along, you know?
Yeah. It's like the little painting is a side piece for the big painting.
Okay, I accept that. Here it is again.
Here it is again.
In all its glory.
Yeah.
And
Partner painting, someone said, and I agree. Yes, Mary.
Partner painting.
What about your partner paintings?
Well, so these paintings are, well, first of all, they're also painted on denim, which it's slightly maybe insignificant in this picture because you can't really see the surface, but I've been using mostly fabric and material that is not canvas and is not something I'm purchasing, as a way to breathe life back into fabric that finds me. I was lucky enough, this is really beautiful denim that was given to me by my brother-in-law, who's a fashion designer. And so I hopefully did it justice by turning it into these paintings, but the surface then has a different tooth and a different quality, the way the paint sits on there, and how hard or easy it is to brush over the surface with the material, with the oil. These are both oil paintings, or acrylic and oil. But anyway, so this pair was, this image was just part of a bigger image of many other paintings that were spread through this space. So it was taken as part of documenting the installation, but then once we took the paint photo, I think my husband took it, they started to look like eyes looking back at me. I don't know. I mean, that was all I can say, is that it wasn't intentional, but this is a series of paintings that are all the same size, and they're all squares. So something interesting happens there with the way that the composition is circular in both of them. Like you could hang these paintings any direction, for me, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to move us along.
Yeah.
So this is a whole nother body of work.
Yeah, that's right.
You want to talk about the
You want me to go first?
Yes.
I think when I spoke previously, I talked about this work, and but to kind of revisit some of the context, this is yet another residency of which I was a invited artist to do studio visits with resident artists who were awarded residencies. And here the site is Acre in Wisconsin. For some reason, the name is escaping me right now. But Acre stands for Artist Cooperative Resident. Why am I blanking on this? Artist Cooperative Exhibitions. How do you spell Acre? Artist Cooperative. What?
ACRE?
Yeah, Artist Cooperative something exhibitions. Oh my gosh, I am so bad right now. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
But Acre has this pretty incredible program that takes place in this rural setting, but it's also based in Chicago, where resident artists have exhibition opportunities in Chicago, because Acre has formed these relationships with different exhibition spaces and different curators in the city. So you get a residency, and then you can have a solo show or a two-person show in Chicago. And they have great programming, and they bring in artists to kind of activate the time for the residents. And while I was there, I decided to make a work, although that was not why I was invited to be there. But in the way that I sometimes like to react to a site, using materials that I, just in trying to be resourceful, use what's around me to make a work.
Mm-hmm.
And the next slide, and we'll come back to this one.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
Yeah, the next slide has oh, that's yours, sorry.
No, this is it. We'll go back.
Yeah, and then we'll go back. So, yeah, this work was initiated by me finding a leftover silk screen from the print shop at Acre that was in really bad condition, which is why it was left over, and quickly painting this text on that reads, "Thanks for the race," and then posting that in a really subversive way along the campus without anyone knowing that I did so, and kind of witnessing the buzz, hearing the buzz around these posters. Who put them up? What does it mean? And after a few days of that and not kind of owning up to doing it, I then invited people, and then you can go back to that slide.
Sorry. Oh gosh. Oh God. Don't look.
Oh.
It's gotten away from me. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you, Schwadren. And then inviting people to compete against me in a race. And just thinking about the relief of some people who thought, phew, this is not about race after all. I'm glad we don't have to have this conversation. And then realizing that it's embedded in the work in a sense, because many people thought, oh, I know you're gonna win. Oh, I don't even wanna do it. And so this kind of way of using humor to kind of invite these conversations around expectation and competition within an environment of a residency.
Love it. So yes, we picked these two. Well,
Yeah.
I'll also say on the side that, you know, a lot of people in my life do call me Schwadi. There's even one who calls me Schwade, but there's only one who refers to me singularly as Schwadren, and that is Ayanna. So
Full name.
you might hear her repeatedly refer to me this way. So that's not permission for anyone else to. I'm just saying. So when we reconnected in the early 2000, around 2010, I think, and we were both kind of making this work that was using just simple black and white ink drawings to say things and to put up in the world, but they were in different contexts, and that was really interesting. And so we pulled back to some images, or when I saw the Thanks for the Race image, I remembered some of the images I had made that I sort of started to talk about to some of the students. But for years I had made, well, I also had a period where I stopped purely painting. It was shorter than yours, but I was lost a bit, and I felt like I needed to go back to something very basic to figure out what I was even doing with my work. And so I had a big concern at that point to just start putting things out into the world to talk to people. And so for that, I think, like, I'm going to just jump forward for a second.
Yeah.
So on the image on the right, remember how you feel right now. Let's see. So this image is from 2007, and I had started working with an artist named Steve Lambert. And when I say working with, it was more like he and I would sit around a table and hang out and talk like friends. And then we'd be also drawing these signs with some kind of very vague ideas about putting them up around town. This is in New York, but we didn't really have any agenda beyond that. And what he was writing wasn't really what I was writing. And sometimes it would come from a conversation blip that he would say something and it would turn into a message that I would put into a sign. But the great part about it for me was that it reactivated my ability to make things and put them out into the world and feel like it wasn't such a big deal. Like, I didn't have to make a giant meaningful painting. I could make a sign, put it out in the world, And something, if someone took it or if someone tore it down, it was okay. And it was very important for me at this period in my life to be able to make art that wasn't so precious. Going backwards, oh God, am I not going backwards? I am not driving this train the right direction. Sorry. Hold on. Keep your pants on. Okay. Where is that?
There it is. There it is.
There it is. So this sign.
Thanks for your patience, everyone. This is kind of an artwork. This is obviously not a formal lecture.
This is happening before you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this sign Give Way was one that I made in the context of a different collaboration several years later. So like Anza mentioned in my bio, I got the chance to teach in Thailand for a year. And so Josh, my husband, and I moved to Thailand, and we just jumped right into a whole new culture where we had no idea what we were in for. Somehow I met an artist who was also making work that looked like this, simple signs that he was putting up and posting around Bangkok where he lived, and we got connected, and he's a really, really wonderful artist. His name is Satit Satarasart, and you can look him up, but he has a very dry sense of humor. His work is extremely conceptual, not like mine at all in terms of my paintings, but we really got along. And so we started to do this we did it again. We sat around, we talked, we made signs. Some of them were in Thai, some of them were in English. And then he got this residency in Berlin. And so once he got there, he was like, send me some things, I'll send you some things. And so what I got out of that was another kind of really playful way to deal with, in this case, architecture, the public, a little bit of subversive kind of dropping myself into a scene that I wasn't even in, because it was he who put them up and then made those choices. And it's subtle, but it was really kind of conceptually open. It opened a lot of things up, and he and I still collaborate on things. And I think this is one of the reasons to talk about this project, is because basically anything good I've ever made comes from some kind of collaborative conversation or effort. And that includes my paintings, even though I make them by myself, but they come from a brain that's been infused with really important conversations with people I respect. So
I'm interested in this in terms of different definitions of public, and also the ways in which we embrace a certain kind of risk. Putting your work in a certain kind of public means that it could be defaced, it could be not wanted, it could be rejected. When we put our things in the public, we welcome by default that the public can act upon that work, right? They can respond. And in the case of that residency, I was kind of playfully poking fun at the competition that's embedded in our field, right? We apply for opportunities, we apply for schooling, we apply for awards. There is a kind of healthy competition that is by default a part of the art world. And depending on your engagement with it, right? You can decide not to do that part of it. But in the case of a residency, be it Oxbow or Acre, there is a kind of opportunity to get to know the folks who are there. And you're also kind of checking out what kind of artists they are, what's going on in their studio. Does it match what you're up to? Does it keep you on your toes? Does it, And so in the case of the kind of public of that residency, for me, that poster, and then revealing that I put the poster up and inviting maybe some of the tension or heat was a fun way to deal with both the politics of being underrepresented in that space, and also just kind of thinking about that site as material itself, right? Like, I didn't come there to make any art, but I'm gonna make art anytime I get ready with anything that's around me, right?
Give her an inch.
Right. And so then the awesome thing that comes out of that is my friend Astria is there afterwards, hears about the project, and then her and Brett work on this incredible publication, and I wound up writing about that work, and it gets published in that sports edition. So just thinking about the different life that you can give your work, right? There's the audience of the work that happens there in real time, and then there's the kind of, if you will, if you want to engage in the kind of discourse part, you might also give the work life after that. Did you roll your eyes, Schwadron?
No, I didn't do it on purpose.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It might be a, kind of an instinctual thing I do, but I wasn't feeling it.
I'm okay with it.
This is just my face.
Okay.
So no, I was appreciating what you were saying. I was deeply listening. I was thinking too about, just for me, I mean, I've only gone to a few residencies myself, but I definitely can identify with, it's a little bit like a game show. Like you're like, I got the thing, and then you show up and you're like, who else is here? And what's, what are we competing for? And what's the thing to do? And what's everyone up to? And I think that was one of the, just to circle back to our first meeting, I mean, that was one of the nice parts about that place, was that because they teach classes there as well as have visiting artists, it's more of a democratic.
It does.
Community. And I never felt like, I was like, wow, like it could be because our trajectories are kind of, they're never quite intersecting, but they're parallel. And so, like, I just felt like there's certain, I guess this is for the students too, it's like there's certain relationships that just keep yielding more and more positive opportunities. So
I should say, I'm not dissing Acre, but it was an opportunity to have a conversation on multiple levels through that gesture. And what I've learned since then is that my budding interest in kind of Black geographies, or kind of Black women's geographies, I think is also present in that work, even though initially I just wanted to make fun of being invited to support the brown people who were there.
Totally.
So let's just make work about that.
Yeah, I mean, and I've talked to you about this as well, but in this slide on the right, my work is this, it's a very small, and you'll see an installation shot later or sooner that shows the context of this work. It's probably like 13 inches high. But this is a work that I made here, but I gave to Satit, my Thai friend, to put in this show in Thailand. That was actually in it's Rikrit Teravanit's new studio in a field, like literally nowhere in Thailand. Like no one knows where it is, no one knows exactly how to find it. They did this really complex map to get people to go to the opening to find the show, and then the work is just like out there. Like I've never seen this painting again. I don't know where it is. I don't know if they ever found it, or like it just flew in the wind or whatever. But I think for me, going to Thailand was a lot of things, but it was also a real shift in the way I thought about making work. Number one, as a foreigner, and as someone who would never have any chance of being taken for someone who belonged somewhere. So there was a really kind of a certain kind of distance that was interesting to me, and also the language gap. In this way of, I took Thai, I gave it my all. I probably speak like a 10-year-old version of Thai, which if you've ever had to speak Thai, it's not that hard. I mean, it's not that easy. So anyway, so I did everything I could, but there was just always going to be a distance. And so it did reinforce kind of this idea of using language as something that is about communication, but it's also about not actually, maybe it doesn't mean, sometimes it means, and then it also cannot mean, and it can just flip into something that's a device that and so this was one of the experiences I had that I think it wasn't what I expected. I didn't know what to expect, but when I went there, I was just like, okay. what's this place all about? And then risking the chance of, I reached out to Satit and asked him, hey, I saw your work online. I don't even know if you speak English really well, but like, do you want to have a coffee and write some signs with this this American girl? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then it yielded this whole thing. So I guess my point is just like, you kind of have to put yourself out there to find the best parts of every opportunity that comes to you as an artist. And
Yeah.
It's yielded so much. So let's look at this combination because we're so behind time.
We gotta get it. Yeah, we gotta push.
Talk about this painting.
Okay. So I have a question. Do you have a sense of the landscape reference? Is there a connection to the text? Are you already thinking about that relationship?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you want me to? Yes, I am. Okay, talk to me. So do you want to tell me some more about that, or you want me to tell you?
Do I want to tell you more about your painting?
Oh, no, I thought you meant about yours.
No, I was talking about, I think it says remember over and over. No?
Yeah, it says remember. There's probably maybe some other things in there, but I can't tell you what they are.
Okay.
Not because I won't, just because I don't really remember. But no, that wasn't, I didn't try to do that. It was more just like a lot of, so like this collaboration kind of thing. This was like me collaborating with my former self. And now that's what's happening a lot in my studio is I've done a lot of the text-based stuff and churned it out. And then it's like I have all this material ready for the next layer of the interface that I'm generating now from my natural environment. So this is kind of one of those paintings that came from making work and not knowing what it's about. And then later you're like, oh, it's a thing for me to work with. So
that's something that I'm interested in. I mean, there are times when I'm beginning with certain interests, but I'm in it to learn from the work, which is kind of a different orientation for me. It distinguishes certain bodies of work. So in this painting, I'm thinking about your embrace of the text-image relationship. And in my various works, I've been keeping those things separate in a way, right? So I use text when I want to do this kind of thing, when I want to activate something, when I want to have a certain kind of voice, when I want to have a certain kind of poetic language. And then I'm kind of leaning on these images and these tensions to do this other thing that I'm also curious about. So it's kind of nice to see that playing out in your work, like you're working with the struggle between those two, and I'm creating some other kind of visual struggles. Like sometimes I'm trying to like make an ugly painting that I can like, even though I know that sounds ridiculous.
I think there's another. Oh, sorry.
No.
I'm gonna move us. This is just a detail. I mean, I like this layout for itself.
Yeah, that's my cropping, because I wanted to I cropped yours and I cropped mine.
I like it
so that they can fit together.
But we can see the real painting here, which this is my favorite, I think.
Yeah.
I think so. Of the one that you showed me. Oh no, I like a bunch, but I love this painting.
It's cool. It's cool.
It's cool.
Someone those ladies are so inspiring to me, and they kind of represent both an entrepreneurial spirit and being subjected to and participating in a pyramid scheme. It's like it's both aspirational in terms of like, let's have our own business, and but then it's like it's Avon,
right.
Mary Kay.
Well, it's funny. Go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say, because for me, this image works similarly but opposite, which is like, it just happened that these two girls are basically twins.
Yeah.
Even to the purse, but I don't know them. but I recognized them.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so it was sort of, there was nothing really aspirational for me with these women, but it was just so interesting that this image of the sign saying that whatever you feel right now is going to change. And I just thought, I wonder if those girls saw that or they didn't, you know what I mean? Just because of the way that the photo ended up being.
Yeah.
So that was why I thought those girls could work with these girls.
This is in fact a diptych in a way, but it's not. These are two wood, so all of the paintings that I'm showing are wood panels, not canvas. And these are two small panels joined. And because it's wood panel, it allows me to, instead of having that armature or that bar cut through the painting to provide support, what happens if it breaks out of the painting, it becomes this kind of sculptural moment. But I also, go ahead.
Oh, that's a wire hanger, I see.
Yeah.
Is it fed through the front of that painting or is it glued on top?
It is actually embedded in the wood panel.
Okay.
Yeah. And kind of like the wire is in kind of like a bow on the inside. It's pretty janky. It's wonderfully janky. Tawdry. It's tawdry.
It's tawdry.
But I also just like this like intergenerational crew of ladies that have on the same kind of color scheme, and then allowing those moments to echo in the painting, and also just moment for me this kind of embrace of the imaginary, right? So like there's kind of this narrative around the entrepreneurial spirit of these women, but that they're engaged in a kind of painting, right? They're engaged with the history of painting, but through makeup, right? Because they can't go to art school, you know. Right. So they have to, in effect, beat their face in order to engage in the kind of aesthetic exploration.
I saw it like they get to create based on their own outfits and their skin tone. They get to create their own camouflage. That was kind of one thought I had, was like, we're going to change instead of it being, and then I went to the landscape of the other ones. It's like you could really go like deeply. So
I'm not mad at that reading.
Yeah, you could have that for free. Okay. Here's the combination.
Here's the combo right here.
We put these in just to be like, why do we put these in?
I think these were the random. This is the random prompt.
This is the back story. So when I'm making these large ink paintings on paper, I have to stand over them or lay down on this, speaking of janky, setup where it's a table where I'm like Supermaning it so that I can put the ink on so that it won't drip. So it's a little bit of a hovering thing. So anyway, I liked that Ayanna also responded to the selfie, except for about her feet.
This is very sleepy and maybe a couple highlights into the studio time, where you think that this would be something cool to post to Instagram, but thank God you don't, you know.
Might delete later.
Yeah.
And by the way, we know that it's 6:02, so we're gonna.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Keep it moving, but please stay with us.
We're so close, y'all.
We know how compelling we are. Come on.
Okay.
Anyway, I love this combination. Can you talk about it?
Okay. So the last image is many layers before this painting, right? It's the same painting. So you can see the extent to which my trying to just push. The reason why I liked your use of the word everything is because I've had this kind of playful thing going on in my own head about putting everything that I've been learning and everything that I've learned about painting into a painting. So it has these geometric elements because that's the part of me that likes order and tight. And then it gives me this opportunity to kind of open up and not be so rigid, or it gives me an opportunity to think about a kind of Black currency as far as these images of women and ads. So I'm kind of dumping everything into the work. So I like the use of everything for that reason.
Yeah, I liked this combination because this is another one from working with Satif, where he took this thing drawing and he put it in this urban forest, which I think actually taps back into that kind of Black in the Woods series of sensations, because for me, this does not feel, it feels a little scary. When I saw it, I was like, ooh, what is this place? Like, it looks like a place bad things happen, but I don't know why I think that. So it's an interesting, and because I also love these objects, these rocks, and the way they're stacked, and the way that the words intersect on top of it. And it's almost like the word drawing could have been just photoshopped on a picture. I don't know. There's something that I don't really quite know how to articulate, but I liked the ominous and the kind of combination of those feelings I'm describing in relation to your painting that also has this sort of depth you can go into, like a forest, like a series of natural kind of veils that you might enter to find, in this case, like this figure who's embedded inside this series of marks and expressive color. It's also a little darker than some of the other, well, I guess not than the last painting you showed, but yeah, something about it, it has more depth of field in some ways than some of the other paintings. So I liked that combo.
There's something about the depth and flat thing that happens with your thing. It doesn't appear to be relaxing in the landscape. It doesn't appear to be laying or responding to the rocks, right? But it also feels a part of that scene. So there's something kind of wonderfully contradictory about that image.
It's kind of, I keep it around because I try to remember it when I'm painting, because I'm looking for some tension when I'm painting on top of text, like, and it has to be right. This is a install shot of that Rickrit studio show. So this isn't all my work, just this little tiny painting. You see it? Where is it now?
That's the Remember one, right? On the
left.
left.
Remember painting in the left, and then there's several other works by other artists. But this is how the show was. It's just like a bunch of stuff. There, in many buildings in Thailand do not have four walls. It's the way it is. So everything is exposed. And I think that's another really huge influence that my time there has had on me. Like, I have zero desire to have my work hanging inside a gallery. I really, and that's why that mill, initially, that mill installation was so cool. It was like my perfect, like, they're gonna knock this thing down, it's being taken over. So I have to think more about what that's all about, but it did ignite that kind of relationship to the exterior art inside the landscape. There's another combo. I think, what's that?
Wipe me down.
Wipe me down. Okay, you can tell this story.
We gotta push. We gotta push.
Your job. Do it.
I mean, it's just fun to kind of get lost in the making, even though that sounds pretty cheesy, right? I'm 5'2". These things are my body relation to, right? Those sweeps are as much about me thinking about the impression of the span of my arm as it is anything else. I mean, the color, but your palette is already kind of naturally things you're reaching towards. So like you can have this, it looks to me like you can have this kind of experience with the material, but there's some kind of prerequisition or pre-decision making as far as like the pre-game layout of what your materials are going to be. Is that true or not true? Like do you have every color in the sun laying there, or? I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying green. Okay. Sometimes I'm enjoying playing with, it's like if a Black Panther was an abstract expressionist, it's like, it's like a Black nationalist palette, but it has the freedom to be expansive in the world it wants to imagine, right?
I love that. I mean, I actually love that as like a philosophy for making your work. And then also like for me, like I respond to the actual formal gestures as well as the palette, and then this kind of buddy painting again. And in terms of mine, I made a series of I made a series of prints that were free for people to take. That's at Everything. That was another Everything project.
Oh,
They're just a stack, and I have still like millions of them. If anyone wants one, just let me know. But they're on like thin paper. And so like a lot of what I've been doing, my way of kind of thinking has to be in motion. So it's when I'm most free of logistics. After I've come to Tahoe and lived here for a while, I started trail running, and now it's become a slight obsession. So when I'm trail running, I can experience nature, but without some type of like, I don't know, like just kind of, it feels like almost by accident. Like there's too much for you to think about. I'm like trying to run, I'm trying not to fall, which I don't do very well. And I'm trying to like actually physically see how much my body can do, which I find pushing my body to an extreme is actually part of the same thinking that correlates to making art. I don't know how to explain it, but that state of mind where you're a little bit unable to hold everything together at once. So I remember running in a race and seeing a bunch of leaves from manzanita plants that were just bleached on the trail because they'd been sitting in the sun. And in the mountains, it's so hot up high that things just instantly kind of fry, like plants just get fried. And so I saw all these leaves, and it was like, it made like when you close your eyes and you see a impression, it made an impression in my mind. And it's kind of how it happens. I think bleached leaves, okay. Then I go back to my studio, and then I'm like, what was that? So I'm like going through similarly, I'm like, I have a kind of a plan, but mostly it's like, how does it come out of me? I'm not sure. But so I liked the kind of ways the plants were mimicking some of your gestures in this.
Yeah.
Or relating to. And then I think this is our almost second to last.
I think this is our second to last, folks.
Okay. So I'll just say this painting on the right is part of an old series of work. And the reason I thought about putting it in is because it's as big as, it's like 7 feet tall. So it almost feels like a skeleton, like a body. And I really felt like some of the work that you were doing, and you just articulated it, related to the physical body of the painter. And so I felt like when I was making these, that was something really conscious in my mind. These were also like a little bit of morning paintings. And so anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think I chose this one to respond to yours because the feeling of this kind of bundle or holding some bouquet that's gone through its life cycle is how I read it in its inversion. And this painting, and when we see the next painting, these were a bit of in conversation with one another as I think about the landscape as this space that has this kind of boundary that maybe a gate or maybe some kind of sign of warning not to cross. Thinking about the tension between urban and rural, thinking about during the 90s and early 2000s, urban as this other way of talking about Black people, as if there's no relationship to the rural, as if there's no Great Migration, before that, before the Great Migration, but just thinking about these kind of geometric moments in this kind of battle with a kind of imaginary landscape.
Yeah, I mean, I for sure see that in both of these. It's kind of like almost a screen to like, again, like what's behind it, what's it keeping you from, what's it letting you in. And I feel for me that the barriers are not the same when it comes to landscape at all, but they are I have like, I struggle with the barriers between what's in here and what's out there
Yeah.
all the time. And so for me, doing these paintings and finding language that I can work with an image helps me experience how to play with those relationships. And in this painting, it says trembling grass, vibrating grass. And again, it was just one of those things that running, it just popped into my head and looking at the grass, and I'm like, is it vibrating or is it trembling? Is it sick? Or is it enjoying itself? And it's almost like putting myself as a human in a position of the grass. So again, I find that what you're saying is so resonant for me, even though my experience is totally different than yours. And that's been the joy of our friendship for me as artists, is really just feeling that reciprocation from you and how you fuel us, you know. I think this is our last slide.
I think this is our last slide too, but yeah, I like the way that you just talked about the history of our friendship.
Yeah.
That's a good way to maybe invite response to some of what we've presented, you think?
Yeah, and I guess I'm not sure from folks if they have questions, if they'd rather me keep the slideshow up so we can look at,
Right.
or if you want to be in a grid. I don't know, Anza, what do you think?
Yeah, or is there anybody out there? Is anybody left?
Hello, we talking to yourself. I can't see until I get out of the slideshow mode. I can't see anything, so.
Oh, there's 55 people. Okay.
Well, hot damn.
All right, we did it.
Woo! Yeah, so what do you think, Anza?
I think it's whatever you all feel like. If you want to keep clicking through images, or if you want to see all of our faces, your call.
What I'm gonna do is, I think I'm gonna escape the slideshow mode, but I'll keep the slideshow up, just because then I can see all of you at the same time. And I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh no, I'll have to share my screen, but
Yeah, this is good. I mean, we could of course continue to talk for the next forever, but I'm feeling the sense that we should invite people to respond, or folks have questions, and then we can kind of continue the conversation in that way.
Okay, so you guys can turn your cameras on, and if you want, so we can see who you are.
And we can also flip through if there's interest in something that we've a particular.
I also cannot see the chat while I'm sharing for some reason. So if there are questions in the chat and Anza, you want to tell us what they are, that's cool, or however.
Yeah, I think we only had one question that popped up during the talk that was in the chat, and that was a technical question from Chris that was curious about how, Ayanna, you make your lines straight.
Ah, yeah. I am taping out things. I am using rulers. I am using stencils sometimes, and then I'm just painting with brushes.
Cool.
Thank you for your question.
Is that Chris Lanier?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, audience, if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat and I will moderate them to our presenters, or you can pop on your audio yourself.
Thank you, Anza.
Mm-hmm.
Julia, I think you can also escape full screen from your sharing mode so you can see the chat. So you're allowed
I escaped full screen, but I still can't see the chat for some reason. I see it.
Oh, I see it. Maybe I can toss up.
Yeah, I don't need to if someone else can tell.
Mary, thank you for your question about Black currency. I'm thinking about, well, I'm specifically thinking about kind of a Black American experience in terms of literally being a kind of currency, and then thinking about the currency of Black images and Black culture. So when I'm using images when I'm using printed matter with images of Black people, I'm kind of exploring the complexity of that. I'm participating in a certain kind of display, a very complicated display, but I'm also recognizing a certain kind of value and power. And so the extent to which I can both be critical and complicit is a contradiction that I'm kind of interested in. And so using ads is my way of exploring that, as opposed to a portrait using a reference to an ad. Someone wants me to talk about landscape more. Nikki, thanks for your question. Yeah, I've been thinking about geographies. I mean, this is something that's more emergent for me, as I mentioned this Black in the Woods course that I teach with Krista Franklin, and us thinking about ways to approach the landscape that engage with identity but isn't limited to identity. So for me, the landscape can be a reference to the body. It can be a reference to the physical landscape. It can be Blackness in reference to soundscape. These are kind of ideas that I'm exploring through the work and looking to define in expansive ways. So I'm probably using it a lot for that reason, because I'm kind of questioning it. Another question, could you speak to the transparency of some of your brushstrokes versus the opaque portions? Thank you, Jessica. I'm interested in the opacity. I'm interested in opacity, like literally. Like I'm interested in some things not being accessible and other things, you know, so I'm thinking about it metaphorically and literally, kind of the right to opacity, and also things that are accessible depending on the viewer. I think what's kind of nice about Schwadron's like work and contrast is that there's sometimes when I'm looking at her work and I'm conscious of kind of a beauty being made. And in my work, I think I'm looking for things that are discordant, or that there are these moments that are difficult to look at in the way that certain kinds of writing, you know, Toni Morrison writing can be hard to read, right? And there's like an unapologetic opacity about certain portions. And then there are other parts that are a bit more accessible. And that tension kind of interests me. So I think that's why what I'm characterizing is sometimes I'm interested in these kind of ugly moments, or these moments that are difficult, but that if you kind of engage, there might be a reward in what's revealed in the painting. Okay, shall I just read the question, Schwadren, you think?
Sure. I can't see anything, so I'm relying on you fully. Karen
says, as artists, have you two experienced anything that challenged your friendship? How did you navigate through it? No, I don't think so.
I mean, we haven't had that problem. It doesn't mean it's not possible, but yeah, we that's what I mean. It's rare that you find someone who, like I said, like there's no reason why you would imagine that the two of us might be in sync with one another, just independent of having run into one another and come friends. But I guess that was one of the reasons we thought this might be useful for those of us who are in the audience who are compelled to make sure they really engage in an artistic community for their life, like going forward. And I think part of it is fueled by risk taking, like I said, reaching out, asking people to engage with you about your work. I mean, I remember that first studio visit, you came in and you were like, I had used blue tape to hold up all my drawings to the wall of this hut that I was in. You're like, what's your name again? First of all, take the blue tape down. Like you're like, I can't even talk to you until you take this blue tape down. I was like, oh my God, you're so right. And it was like, you know, so like sometimes just the scenario where you find yourself kind of, I don't know, relying on each other from the jump it can really happen in an art context because you're so invested in your work. And so I think that, you know, of course we became friends on top of that, but I do think that like you pursue your artistic community where you find it and where you put yourself. And it's not always going to be at a conventional location. Like, it's not like go to art openings to make friends. Probably not a good idea for making friends, but especially not these days.
Friendships can emerge in any context, but
we're having a conflict right now, Karen.
But I think the point is that there was a kind of connection, right? And then we did the work of staying connected. And it was at a time in which we didn't have social media platforms to help facilitate that, right?
Yeah.
So what typically happened is every 6 months or so, you shoot me an email or I shoot you an email like, hey, what's up? How's it going? What's going on? You know, or I found myself, I thought of you and then I checked your website and so that was this other way of keeping up with what you were doing. But yeah, when I think about some of my residency experience and even my being invited to residencies to provide studio visits, sometimes it wasn't really the takeaway wasn't the work as much as it was some of those meetings, some of those connections that were formed that then became friendships, right? And so that's what I got from it. You know, I got that connection with that person, and then that community, that becomes your community, and then that becomes your network.
Yeah, I mean, Ayanna also is so much older than I am. Just she's 2 years old, but she had already gone to grad school at Tyler, where I ended up going to grad school. But her experience and talking about her grad school experience was extremely influential. So that when I was applying to grad school and was considering Tyler, you know, I really had this personal reference that I could talk to about how it worked in her case.
Name dropping.
Oh yeah, I name dropped you. That's how I got in. But anyways, keep thinking that. The point is that, no, I'm kidding. The point is that, like, I think at, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, not to like nostalgize that time, but it was just like, it was harder to keep in touch. You had to call people. You had to show up at their house. You had to go to their stuff, and no one was doing selfies, and no one was keeping in touch, quote unquote, on Instagram. So I do think that, like, for everybody who's trying to figure out what happens next, that putting the effort in, and all of what the alumni have been doing that I've witnessed, going to each other's shows in different cities, continuing to, you know, do critique groups outside, or even just calling each other and hanging out on Google Hangout or whatever. Like, it's super important, and it can change the trajectory of your work and of your life. I really, not to overstate it. So, you know, I've dragged Ayanna to everything I've ever done, including this program. So
that's kind of true. And the reward is that we can engage in this kind of conversation in this context, right? Like, I think what's been really awesome is our commitment to staying connected is also about, like, here's someone I trust. I trust their eye on my work, or I trust their ear in kind of hearing what I'm struggling with in my work. Here's someone I want to have that kind of critical discussion with. And that is a form of support.
Especially in these times.
Especially in these trying times. Julia mentioned a disinterest in galleries and the Hedberg venue as a dream.
Healdsburg. Healdsburg, but yes.
Oh, Healdsburg, yeah. Yet the home for the work was transitory. Is there an ideal forever home for your work?
Me?
Yeah.
I think.
From Roman, shout out to Roman.
Oh, Roman, hi Roman. I think that I know. I don't know. I mean, I'm open, but I wonder about that. You know, I don't know that. I'm not saying if a museum called me tomorrow and said, we'd love to install 80 of your paintings in this sanctuary, I would say no. Of course, I'd say yes. But I did get a special thrill, and I do get a special kind of, I get extremely invigorated seeing the work inside a non-conventional space that has its own architectural or natural contribution to the setting for the work. And maybe it's because it suggests a possible level of another kind of collaborative thing that I could do, but I don't quite have the language. I just feel that it's super exciting for me to see the stuff outside in it. And I also love to see people, different kinds of people interacting with something that happens in a space like that. Like that show was full of kind of all kinds of folks, not just people who you find in a museum. People who were walking by on the street, people who came to hear a band that was also playing during it. And so it's like, you got to figure out which venues are worthwhile and which are serious and which are going to yield, a good, return for feedback and experience. But I do think that, the conventional, what I understand is the conventional gallery system is not, I can't say it's exactly my aim.
I'm interested in all the venues, galleries, holler at me, museums, I'm your girl. I also want to make work without their permission, right? Like I'm trying to keep all of the ways in which I'm interested in putting my work in the world to be in operation, right? Yep. Like my work isn't dependent on that system, but I'm also trying to move these paintings. So,
right. Like I said, if they call me, I'm not going to say no, but I can't say that I'd wait to make the work until the venue appears.
Right. Got bills to pay. I think we're really close. I think it's 8:30. I want to be respectful of people's time. I mean, if there is a final question for Schwadren or I, we can take that, but I want to be conscious of people's lives and things they have going on this exciting Wednesday night. Okay.
No questions? I can't see, so I'm not your mercy.
I don't see any. I don't want to pressure them into asking questions. So look, this is what I want to do. I want to thank everyone for being a part of this conversation, for your patience with Schwadren and I as we revisited some of our history, for your entertainment. We hope there was some takeaways that could be valuable. Shout out to Sierra Nevada University, moving on. And the MFA-IA program, and Russell, and Anza, and Logan, and all the great people that are a part of the program, of which I'm also a part. But yeah, thank y'all so much for inviting me back. And give Schwadren all the money. She's amazing.
I mean, I can't argue, but I love you too. And thanks for listening to us, everybody.
Yeah. Ayanna.com.
Find her, follow her. Ayanna Sphere.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic. Ayanna, you just did my goodbye, so that was great. I'm off the hook. Everything Ayanna just said, go with that. That was fantastic. If you're like really feeling it, want to connect, I saw a couple alumni in the virtual room that I hadn't seen yet before. So if you want to connect afterwards, we have those jump-in rooms. Logan has just linked in the chat to a listing of all of our virtual events, public events this residency, and included in that are those jump-in chats. So for those of you who don't know, if you're in the public or in the program, you can click on those, and it's old school chat room style, but you can connect kind of with the public like you would after the lecture and just hanging out in the lecture room. Logan has just linked it again, so you can find it there. We've got a couple more public events coming up tomorrow night. We've got the thesis exhibition. We've got Matt Freeman coming up. We've got Midway. We've got graduation. So keep coming back. We love seeing you. Chris Clother, I'm talking to you directly. Hi. And it's wonderful to have you all here. So we're going to say good evening, and hopefully we'll see you in a jump-in chat room.
Thanks, guys. I'll hang out in the jump-in if anyone wants to say what's up.
I sent the last reference